Howdy folks, monthly update for the month of August. Sitting here on, the 4th of September 2024, right smack bang in the middle of the Rugby Championship of the same year. It's a bit of news out. The South African Rugby Union has apologised for what went on with the Haka disruptions the other day. 7-star Rodrigo Isgro, the Argentinian, is on the move in terms of signing for a 15 side. And then Rassie Erasmus being compared to Jabba the Hutt as a villain by one of the New Zealand broadcasters. Kind of some interesting stuff going on. But first, some stats and some thanks for the month of August. And just a big thank you to you all for coming along in the previous month and for this video here right now. Thank you very much. The community is what it is because of you guys' interactions, the viewing, the commenting, the liking, the subscribing, all that stuff that YouTube loves. And personally, you know, I love the comment section. I try to get in there as much as possible. Half of the stuff that I learn of, like insights into new and up and coming players, or, you know, guys to look out for, tactical trends and stuff, all that kind of stuff. You know, there's heaps of good information in the comments on this very channel, and generally the banter I find is pretty good. So yes, cheers to you all for coming along. Some of the main stats for the month that was, two most popular in terms of views videos. South Africa, New Zealand game one. Kind of unsurprising because that was the build up to that one was massive. And then New Zealand, Argentina game one. Both games New Zealand lost. So there seems to be a connection between New Zealand losing and people coming to see what I've got to say about it. I think that's just a thing. I follow a few ice hockey channels, believe it or not, and there's one guy who's got a Toronto Maple Leafs channel. He's dedicated basically only to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and every time they go out in the playoffs, his video just goes gangbusters because everyone wants to see. He's a real animated guy, though. Steve Dangle, if you haven't heard of him. But yes, both games the All Blacks lost. We'll see how things go for game two against the Boks this coming weekend. Top countries by geography. Where are you guys coming here from? South Africa number 1, New Zealand number 2, Australia 3, UK 4, Ireland 5. And I'm really enjoying South African place names. You guys have got some really cool sounding cities. Like we've heard of Boksburg in a previous one, Pietermaritzburg, which was pretty nice. There's a town in South Africa called Centurion. You guys must have some good cricket players surely coming from Centurion. Or any rugby players who got to 100 caps. You feel like getting 100 in cricket's easier than getting to 100 test caps. But Centurion, that's a pretty cool place name, man. And also, there's a bunch of viewers from Dubai, of all places. I wouldn't have thought Dubai particularly big on rugby, but potentially a few expats there in Dubai. So welcome to all the viewers from Dubai and Centurion as well. If you guys haven't subscribed, please do us the favor and do that if you haven't done so. Over half the people watching haven't subscribed. Helps the channel out. What other channels are you guys watching? Well, you're watching all the kind of official channels like the All Blacks channel, the Rugby Championship channel, which has got all the highlights. But in terms of some kind of independent content creators, you guys are watching Squidge Rugby, which is one that makes sense because he is still, I think, the biggest kind of independent rugby creator and analyst, him and his brother. Wildcard, for those kind of impassioned Aussie reactions. His channel is always pretty good value. Kiwi Lads for the old live commentary. Brendan Nell, like a proper rugby journalist who posts all the press conferences and whatnot as well. Forever Sports, likewise. South African connection. And then Egg Chasers. Tim from Egg Chasers is back in South Africa again. Lucky fella, man. He's going to some big games and getting some clippies into him. So, yes. Welcome back, guys, for the month of August. We look forward to what's going on in September. I need to say a quick thanks to all the patrons for supporting the channel. Essentially, these guys keep the channel running. A special thanks to Connor for signing up for Patreon. Cheers, man, for coming along. He's a Stormers fan, so good man for coming along. If you guys want to join this illustrious group, there will be a link down in the description. Any support you guys give is appreciated, but I mean, being here and watching the videos is kind of the most important thing. But if you can go to that extra level like Connor, links down in the description like I mentioned. Also to Jack and Angus for their continued support as well. Really, really means a lot and does keep the channel going. Now some news. South Africa's apologised for the music, the fireworks and the plane flying over during the Haka. And I'm kind of pleased that the thing was being confirmed now as basically just a timing error. I mentioned, if you haven't seen it, in an episode of 2 Cents Gets Distracted, which is the podcast I do with Tony from Distracted Sports. Like, amongst all the whinging we did about losing, apologies for that, I hope we gave South Africa the credit that was due. I think we did, but if you haven't seen that latest episode, I'll put a link down that or there or somewhere. But yeah, I guessed, this was on Monday our time, that it was probably just a timing error. Because, I mean, I know how hard it is sometimes just to get my kids to get their school bags ready, shoes on, breakfasted, teeth brushed before they head to school for their kind of 8:55 start of school. That's 2 children. They're talking about a bloody, Airbus, what is it, that number, A330? To fly over the stadium at a very particular time. That had to be some really, really, really hard stuff to organise. And it was a few seconds off. So it kind of, the music and whatnot. Apparently the guy who was in charge of setting off the music and whatnot heard the cheer and he couldn't see what was going on. So he heard the cheer and assumed it was the right time. So yeah, it was just a timing error. So no malice, which I assumed, like I always try to take the side of. Most of the time I don't feel like people are malicious. I didn't feel like it was a deliberate attempt to disrupt the Haka, and that turns out to be true. So I'm pleased that that's come out. And the All Blacks guys, they've interviewed about it. They interviewed like Ethan Blackadder. He didn't seem particularly perturbed about it. He also mentioned that getting the timing right was probably a pretty tricky thing. So I'm glad that's not been made into a big thing. Like the New Zealand media did try to make it into a big thing, like disrespecting the Haka and all that stuff. But I'm glad it hasn't kind of gone beyond it. So yes, that one happened, and it was a timing issue. Still pretty cool though. It was a pretty, I don't know, cracking atmosphere and good start to the game. Rodrigo Isgro, the Sevens maestro. I admit I haven't seen enough Sevens to really fully appreciate how good this guy is. I know he was the 2023 Sevens Player of the Year, and prior to the Olympics, people were saying the Argentinians are a really good shout for gold. It didn't end up happening for them. It was actually kind of a disappointing Olympics for them, but seen a little bit of him at Test Rugby, but he's signed for Harlequins, hence the Harlequins jersey hanging in the background. So fingers crossed he can turn some of that absolute Sevens magic into consistent and exciting performances at 15s. It's not always easy to make the shift. Not every guy is able to have the same impact when there's so much less space out on the rugby field, but certainly it's an exciting one. Remember, he has played Test rugby for the Pumas at 15s level as well. You feel like playing for Quins and getting kind of 15s rugby week in, week out can only benefit the Pumas in terms of getting a player who's got that incredible skill set to, apply that to 15s and then hopefully to Test match rugby level as well. The Pumas have got some good outside backs at the moment, so a bit of good news, I feel like, for Quins and for the Pumas and for Rodrigo Isgro himself. So fingers crossed he has a good transition to the 15-man game. And then lastly, Rassie Erasmus being compared to a couple of science fiction villains. I didn't even know this show existed, SENZ, which shows you kind of how out of touch with some of the mainstream media I am. Apparently it's a radio show. I don't really listen to AM radio in the car. If I am listening to the radio, it is usually to music on the FM dial, but there's an AM show which does sports talk. One of the shows hosted by Scotty Stevenson and Israel Dag. Apparently they brought up the topic of Rassie Erasmus, and it was prior to the last test where they had not named Eben Etzebeth in their initial squad. Remember, the Springboks always named their team early, and then Eben actually was adjusted to make the bench. Apparently Sumo took exception to this and was basically saying that like Rassie does whatever he wants, and he's got his like own kind of empire, and how much clippies and coke has he been on and whatnot. So yeah, I don't really get why he's looking at him as a villain for making a selection change, unless again he's looking at it from the point of view of like that Rassie is a villain, and like the flyover thing, like you're seeing malice where there's no malice. like Eben had an injury cloud and initially wasn't named and then was past fit, so was named. Usually coaches do it the other way around. If they think a guy is eligible for selection and he's got a niggle or something, they'll pick him, and then it's very common for guys to drop out at the last minute. It is unbelievably common. It doesn't happen a lot the other way around, but the way the Boks pick their team tends to be like they pick the team on a Monday, was it Sunday, and then they do the training like the next day. So Eben wasn't fit the day they picked the team, but then was able to get through the training. And it's Eben Etzebeth, so why wouldn't you pick him? I don't see the malice that he's like trying to play mind games and trying to trick Razor or something. Like Razor's going to pick his best team anyway. Whether Eben is available or not is one of the uncontrollables from an All Blacks point of view. So I don't get what all the fuss was about. As I said, like if it was Ardie Savia for the All Blacks, if they thought initially he wasn't going to be fit and they named the side and Ardie wasn't available and then he became fit, would you not pick him just because you've already named the team, or would you seriously consider it? I don't know. I know a lot of South African fans didn't appreciate the comparison because, number one, both those characters are villains. And number two, both those characters are pretty big characters in terms of physically sizable. And Rassie has an autoimmune disease which apparently can cause a bit of weight gain. So, yeah, it seems like a pretty dumb one for mine. But Sumo doesn't. Sumo used to be a pretty big guy himself, actually, but he lost a lot of weight over the last kind of 15 years, I think. So, yeah, it's a bizarre one. I don't really get it personally, but I guess if you want to see him as a villain and that gets the headlines, that's what they're in the business of these days. A lot of the media stuff which gets the headlines is the stuff which goes sensationalist. Like I said, with the flyover, disrespecting the Haka, like with these guys on the radio, comparing Rassie to science fiction villains. That's what it's about. If you want to get clickbaity headlines, that is the way to go. Hopefully, I'm not doing that kind of stuff. I try to steer away from that kind of stuff personally. I mostly just want to talk about the game. I want to talk about the players. I want to give you some stats, all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I personally enjoy. I hope you guys enjoy it too. As I said, thank you guys so much for being along for the month. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the videos. Leave comments. It's all much appreciated. Love having you guys here. Love talking about some rugby. You guys take care of yourselves. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.